April 1945, Bavaria, Germany. The war is dying, not cleanly, not quietly. It is choking to death on rubble and ash, and the silence of cities that used to be cities. General George S. Patton Jr. is moving east. His Third Army has torn through France, Luxembourg, and now Germany itself, 600 miles in 9 months. A pace so violent it broke the calculators of German military strategists. His tank column cuts through a village somewhere in the Bavarian countryside. The name of the village does not matter. What matters is what happens in the next 45 seconds. The convoy rolls, heavy, loud, grinding through a street that was once someone's morning walk to buy bread. The buildings are half standing. Some are nothing but door frames. Doors that lead nowhere. Windows with no rooms behind them. And then, there is a boy. He is 9 years old, maybe 10. He stands at the side of the road, thin, pale. His coat is too small. His shoes are wrong for the weather. His hair is matted and his face is the face of a child who has not slept properly in months. He watches the American tanks come. He does not run. He does not hide. He stands up straight, perfectly straight, chin up, heels together, right arm rigid, cutting upward at a diagonal. He salutes. The Nazi salute, directed at the most powerful American general in the European theater. The column slows. Every soldier in that convoy sees it. Every man behind every gun sees a little boy throwing up a heil in the direction of their commanding officer. Some of them tense, some of them reach. And Patton sees him too. What happens next rewrote everything people thought they knew about the man. Understand who George Patton was before you judge what he did. He was not soft. He was not patient. He was not the general who sent letters home. He was the general who slapped a shell-shocked soldier in a hospital tent and called him a coward. He was the general who said war was the most magnificent thing a man could participate in. He was the general his own commanders feared was too brutal, too honest, too much. He had liberated concentration camps 3 weeks before this moment. He had walked through Ordruf. He had seen the pits. He had seen the bodies stacked like firewood. He had gotten physically ill outside the gate, and he was not a man who got ill. He had looked at his soldiers and said, "Now you know why we fight." He hated the Nazis with a precision and a fury that never burned cold. And now, a German boy, a child soaked in Nazi ideology, raised on Nazi salutes, conditioned from birth to believe in the machinery that built those pits, was throwing that salute at his tank. The column stops. Patton stands up in the vehicle. Every eye in the street moves to him. The boy does not flinch. He holds the salute. His arm is trembling. Whether from cold or fear, no one can tell. Maybe he does not know himself. And Patton does something that nobody expected. He salutes back. Not the Nazi salute. His own. The American salute. 2 fingers to the brim of his helmet. Clean. Military. Precise. Soldier to soldier. Then the column moves again. That is it. That is the entire exchange. 45 seconds. Maybe less. But it echoed for 80 years. Now ask yourself the question that every historian who found this account had to ask. Why? Patton was not known for mercy in that direction. He had written and spoken with contempt about German civilians. He had watched his men die because of German fanaticism. He had just finished liberating the proof of where that fanaticism led. So why salute the boy? The answer lives in something Patton understood that most people never want to admit. The boy was not the boy. The boy was a product. 9 years old. When the Nazis came to power, he was not yet born. When the Hitler Youth was mandatory, he was still learning to read. He did not choose the salute. The salute was installed in him the way language is installed in a child. Automatically. Completely. Without consent. Patton had studied history more deeply than almost any general of his era. He had read Caesar. He had read Napoleon. He understood that armies move through populations, and populations do not simply choose their ideology the way adults choose a coat. He also understood something about the moment itself. That boy, standing there rigid, terrified, alone on a rubble-lined street while enemy tanks rolled past, was doing the only thing his entire world had taught him to do when authority appeared. He was showing respect the only way he knew. And Patton, who understood soldiers better than he understood almost anything else, recognized it. There are accounts from officers present that day. The story was retold in letters, in memoirs, in mess hall conversations that happened weeks later when men were trying to process what the war had made them and what it had made everyone around them. One officer reportedly said Patton told him later, "That boy was a soldier doing his duty. So was I." Whether those exact words are true is debated. What is not debated is the action. The salute happened. Now here is where it gets complicated. Here is the part nobody talks about cleanly. Some argued Patton was wrong, that you do not return a Nazi salute under any circumstance, that the gesture legitimized something that should only be condemned, that a general of his stature had an obligation to make a different statement, that 45 seconds in Bavaria could be a photograph that echoed the wrong message forever. They were not entirely wrong. Others argued it was one of the most profound acts of that entire war, that in the middle of a campaign built on dehumanization, on the industrial reduction of human beings to categories, to enemies, to numbers tattooed on arms, one man looked at a child and chose to see him as a child, not a Nazi, not an enemy, a confused, frightened boy who needed some someone to see past the arm he had raised. They were not entirely wrong either. That is the problem with moral gray areas. Both sides have standing. Both sides carry weight. The question is not which side is right. The question is which weight you choose to carry. The war ended 26 days later. Germany surrendered. The architecture of the Third Reich collapsed so quickly that people who had spent their lives inside it suddenly had no map, no identity, no instruction for who to be next. That boy in Bavaria was one of millions. Children raised on one complete worldview, handed a rubble pile, and told, now build something else. Patton never got to see what they built. He died in December 1945, a car accident in Mannheim. He survived Normandy, North Africa, the Battle of the Bulge, and ended in a hospital bed from a fractured cervical vertebra after a collision on a road in Germany. 12 days of paralysis, then gone. His death landed with a strange weight because it was so incongruous. A man who had ridden through some of the most violent engagements in modern military history, dying in a peacetime traffic accident, felt like the universe had gotten the paperwork wrong. He never wrote at length about the saluting boy. The story exists in fragments, in the recollections of men who were there, in letters that surfaced decades after the war, in oral histories recorded in the 1970s and 1980s, when veterans finally started talking about the things they had carried home. But the boy, some researchers have tried to find him, to identify which village, which road, which child. So far, no one has made the confirmed connection. The boy grew up somewhere in post-war Germany. He became part of the generation the Germans call the Trümmerkinder, the rubble children, the ones who built the Federal Republic from the ground up because there was nothing left to inherit except the bill. If he is alive today, he is in his late 80s. He may not remember. Memory is strange that way. The enormous moments of childhood sometimes dissolve. Sometimes only the small things stay. The smell of bread, a neighbor's name, a winter that would not end. Or maybe he remembers perfectly. Maybe he has carried for 80 years the image of a tank stopping, of a general standing up, of an arm lifted not in the gesture of his father's war, but in the clean, unfamiliar salute of the man who ended it. Maybe that moment was the first crack in a wall he had been building since before he understood what walls were for. History does not reward nuance. It rewards stories with clean heroes and clean villains. It rewards decisions that land on one side of a line. Patton gave it a story that refuses that comfort. He was a man of spectacular contradictions, brilliant and brutal, visionary and bigoted, capable of extraordinary compassion and extraordinary cruelty, sometimes in the same week, aimed at people in the same army. But in Bavaria, on that road, in those 45 seconds, he made a choice that carries more complexity than most military decisions carry in 5 years. He could have ignored the boy. The column would have rolled on. No one would have noted it. Nothing would have been remembered. He could have had the boy detained, questioned. It was a legitimate military concern, an enemy combatant, technically. The war was not over. He could have looked at that salute and seen what it was, a symbol of everything he had spent 4 years destroying, and responded with the contempt it historically deserved. Instead, he looked at a 9-year-old standing alone in the ruins of a country his own ideology had destroyed, and he saw the soldier under the symbol. He saw someone performing the only ritual of respect available to them, using the only language they had been given, and he responded in his own language. Not agreement. There is a difference. It is not a comfortable difference. It does not resolve cleanly, but it is real. The greatest military commanders in history were not always the most moral men. They were the ones who could hold the full complexity of the human condition in one hand while making decisions that would shape the next century with the other. In 45 seconds on a Bavarian road, Patton held both. Whether he held them correctly is a question that does not have a final answer. It has only the question itself, persistent, unresolved, waiting for each new generation to pick it up and turn it over. The war created monsters. It also created moments like this one, moments where the machinery of ideology broke down long enough for one person to see another person, fully, without the armor of category. That boy was a soldier doing his duty. So was I. If he said it, it is the most honest thing any general said in that war. If he didn't, if those words are apocryphal, assembled from fragments and inference, then the action itself says them anyway. Because Patton stood up and saluted back, and the column moved on, and somewhere in Bavaria, a boy lowered his arm and stood in the dust and watched the Americans roll east. And whatever happened inside him in that moment, whatever small, irreversible thing shifted, that is the part of history that never made it into the official record. The question: a general who liberated concentration camps. A boy conditioned from birth by the regime that built them. One salute. One response. Was Patton right to salute back? Or did returning that gesture, even with different intent, send the wrong message to every soldier watching? Comment your answer. There is no clean side. That's the point.